the early hours of March 26, 1872, the quiet town of Lone Pine, California, was rocked by one of the most powerful earthquakes in U.S. history. Before the San Francisco quake of 1906, before modern seismographs, this violent rupture tore the Owens Valley apart. Entire hillsides shifted. Homes collapsed. A lake was born. This is the story of the Lone Pine earthquake, California's forgotten big one. Welcome to Waste Media. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified every time we post. In the decades following the California Gold Rush, the Owens Valley was seen as the next frontier. Settlers moved into the high desert, building homes, staking mining claims, and establishing communities along the base of the Sierra Nevada. Lone Pine, founded in the 1860s, was one of these new outposts. Positioned near the base of Mount Whitney, the highest peak in the continuous United States, Lone Pine was named after a solitary pine tree that once stood near Lone Pine Creek. By 1872, the town had grown into a modest but thriving settlement of roughly 250 residents, mostly miners, ranchers, and shopkeepers. Many of the town's buildings were made of adobe, sun-dried brick, and mud, ideal for the desert climate, but dangerously vulnerable to seismic activity. Homes, schools, and businesses lined the dusty roads, among them a general store owned by French immigrants, Charles and Madeleine Masson, who had arrived just a few years earlier with their 10 children. At exactly 2:30 in the morning, with no warning, the ground beneath Lone Pine erupted. What followed was one of the most powerful earthquakes in American history. Entire sections of the valley floor lurched and cracked. Massive boulders broke loose from the mountainsides. In seconds, the town was reduced to rubble. Of the 80 structures in Lone Pine, only 20 remained standing. The Masons' home and store were among those destroyed. Their daughter, Alice, was killed in the collapse. In the eerie silence that followed, neighbors dug through the debris with their bare hands, searching for survivors. Dozens were injured. 27 people, over 10% of the town's population, were dead. The damage didn't stop at Lone Pine. Reports from across Inyo County described buildings, quote, thrown down in almost every town, end quote. The courthouse in Independence crumbled. At Owens Lake, workers building a jetty for a steamboat watched in disbelief as the lake bed tilted beneath them, shifting the shoreline by nearly 200 feet. In some areas, the valley floor had dropped more than 20 feet. A new lake, later named Diaz Lake, had formed overnight. The survivors did what they could to carry on. In the days after the quake, families salvaged wood from fallen structures and began rebuilding. Not in adobe this time, but in timber, better able to flex and survive the next quake. The town of Lone Pine would rise again, scarred but resilient. The 1872 Lone Pine earthquake wasn't just a disaster. It was a tectonic convulsion so powerful, it permanently reshaped the land. Modern estimates place the magnitude of the quake between 7.8 and 8.2. The quake was triggered by rupture along the Lone Pine Fault and segments of the Owens Valley Fault. These are part of a twin system of normal and strike-slip faults that run along the floor of the valley, bordered by the towering Sierra Nevada to the west and the Inyo Mountains to the east. The movement was massive. Vertical displacement of up to 20 feet and lateral shift right across the surface of over 40 feet in some places. The earth had essentially torn in two. The most extreme deformation occurred near Lone Pine and Independence, but the visible rupture extended nearly 100 miles from Hawaii Reservoir in the south to Big Pine in the north. Even ground as far away as Bishop showed deep cracks. One report described a 12-mile fissure that split open near the epicenter, like the earth had been unzipped. The shaking was so intense it stopped clocks in San Diego. It rattled dishes in Sacramento. John Muir, sleeping in his Yosemite Valley cabin over 200 miles away, was shaken awake. He called it a noble earthquake. Closer to Lone Pine, the damage was apocalyptic. Buildings collapsed in seconds, especially adobe structures, which crumbled under the violent jolt. Of the 59 homes, 52 were completely destroyed. In the nearby town of Independence, the county courthouse was leveled. In Indian Wells, 80 miles to the south, adobe walls cracked from the stress. The estimated cost of the destruction was $250,000, a staggering amount for the time. In today's terms, that's over $6 million. But more than the loss of property was the loss of life and the trauma of the experience that left its mark on the region. Aftershocks continued for months. Some were strong enough to knock down chimneys and send people running into the street. For the residents of the Owens Valley, life was divided into before the quake and after the quake. It was one of the most violent earthquakes ever to strike the continental United States, and yet most people today have never heard of it. And today, while travelers fly down Highway 395, chasing peaks, hot springs, or ski resorts, the memory of the earthquake lingers in the dust, in the rock layers, and in the scars left behind. If you guys enjoyed this video on Lone Pine and the earthquake of the 1800s that completely destroyed the town, make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. It helps the channel a lot. And check out the Patreon. I just put a video up on the Patreon about Lookout Mountain. If you don't know what Lookout Mountain is, it was an Air Force station at the top of Laurel Canyon during the Cold War. It was a film studio for the military. They made all types of films there. That's where they would edit the footage of the atomic bomb tests, propaganda films, military films, film stuff. It was just a big film studio at the top of Laurel Canyon. So check that out. It's got really interesting history, and I go deep into the history. That's on the Patreon. So if that interests you, check that out. I got more content coming. I've been a bit busy lately, but a lot more videos coming. See you guys next time.